on December 12th. Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect. The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Streaming December 12th, only on Disney Plus.
This is Off the Record.
Hello and welcome to Off the Record, our new Sunday show. I'm Rebecca Larson and I'm joined by my good friend, Amy McElroy. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Always happy to be here, especially starting off a new series.
I know. I'm so excited about doing
Me
Off the
too.
Record because I feel like this gives both of us the opportunity to be kind of silly and talk about things that are relevant. You know, I feel like we see so much stuff on social media where it's fun. It gets you thinking or talking about fun things. So this series is just going to be like historical what ifs. We're going to talk about like TV series, films, historical fiction, anything we want to, really, right?
Yep. And lots of laughing with it.
Yes. So you guys know I love to laugh and Amy enjoys laughing too. So we're going to have a good time with this. And we decided for our first episode, we're going to do a very popular subject. And, you know, everybody knows who Anne Boleyn was. Everybody knows.
I should hope so.
If you don't know who Anne Boleyn was, I don't know why you're here. She is the most recognizable wife of Henry VIII. I often say that's probably because she was executed. Had she not been executed, would we even know her name? Right?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it does make one wonder, doesn't it? But so today we're going to do a what if when it comes to Anne Boleyn, because we were kind of talking about what if she hadn't married Henry VIII? Yeah, okay. Her life would have looked so different.
Absolutely.
What
So would
if?
a lot of other people's.
Yes. So I kind of wanted to look at some of the potential husbands that she could have had instead of Henry VIII.
Yeah.
And do you want to start with yours? Because I think if we go kind of chronologically, I don't even know if that we can go chronologically with this, to be honest with you. But
I think you can mostly. Obviously, there's overlaps, but
yeah, there is.
yeah, I think you can mostly.
Okay, so who do you have as a potential groom?
So I think the first one has got to be James Butler. So for anybody that doesn't know, in 1515, Thomas Butler, who was the Earl of Ormond, died, and he was the great-grandfather of Anne on her dad's side.
All right.
So their family base was Ireland, and it basically left a void. Well, not so much a void, it caused issues because you've got Thomas Boleyn, who's got a claim to that earldom, and you've also got Piers, who was kind of already acting in that role before his father died, but obviously he thought that he should step in. But Piers actually had a son called James, and
Good
he
name.
was actually in the household of Thomas Wolsey at the time.
Oh,
So technically in the household, aka hostage. So, you know, the idea was if Anne married him, then that unites the two clans kind of thing. So, you know, both sides win. But it was it seems to have gone silent. And then Thomas Howard, who was Earl of Surrey at the time, he raised it again, and it actually got in front of Henry VIII as a possible marriage for Anne. And he didn't reject it. Obviously, he didn't know Anne at the time she was in France, but
yeah.
he rejected it at that point. And then again, it kind of goes quiet. And then Thomas Howard again puts it forward just a year later, and I think by that point he was Lieutenant of Ireland, I believe, and he wanted to come back. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want that appointment. He wasn't well at that time. So he pushed it forward again, thinking if I can resolve all this, then I can come home. There's no point in me being here when Thomas Boleyn's daughter would be, with James Butler, who
Yeah.
would be obviously the next Earl after his own dad died. And obviously Thomas Boleyn was loyal to Henry. So it kind of ties it in that they don't have to worry about Ireland anymore because the loyalty to Henry comes through that marriage. And Wolsey essentially says, like, I'll deal with it when I get back to England. So that's kind of it. But he does say to Henry, don't send James Butler back to his dad yet. He's essentially too valuable as a hostage for us to do that. I'll sort the wedding out when I get back. And then it just doesn't happen. So I think Anne got the recall around that point from France, but it just never happened. And I think the idea was that they came to the conclusion that they could, negotiate. Thomas Boleyn ended up getting the title Earl of Ormond, and then Piers Butler got the title of the Earl of Ossory. So both parties are happy. They've both got earldoms.
Yeah.
Like, they've done what they wanted to do, and Anne didn't have to get married. So, and we don't know her feelings on it, but I can probably guess that she didn't really want to go to Ireland.
Do you say that as an English folk?
No, I love Ireland. So, but I think back then, if you've got a choice of being around the royal court or being shipped off to somewhere that you don't know, like she'd never have been to Ireland, would she? So I think for her it would have been, I'm away from my family, I'm away from the royal court. She probably would have wanted to stay in England, I would assume.
Yeah. But when you when you said this, she probably didn't want to go to Ireland. I immediately associate that, and I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this, but growing up in Minnesota and having lived in North Dakota, we always looked at Canada as the, ugh, Canada. Who
Oh
would
no,
ever
I
want
love
to?
Ireland. Love it. And Scotland, to be fair, and Wales. Love them
Yeah,
all.
they look absolutely beautiful. By
Hmm.
comparison, Canada is huge and vast and snowy. That's my impression of Canada. Honestly, I've only
Yeah, I've
been
never
there.
been to Canada, so
Yeah,
I can't say it.
I've only been there
Although
a
I
couple
do
of
have a
times.
friend who absolutely adores Canada. So,
I think if you live on a coast in Canada, then I think it's probably good. But we are like smack dab in the center of Canada where it's like nothingness and plains
oh,
and
okay.
yeah, so not quite as beautiful. But
No,
anyway,
I meant it as in she probably just wanted to stay around the royal court and her own family.
probably.
No offense to Ireland, I absolutely love it.
It looks beautiful in pictures and films, so I would love to go there someday too.
And brilliant accents as well.
Yes. Yes. But if she had married him, she would have been a countess,
Yeah.
which would have been a
Well,
pretty decent.
wasn't a bad proposition, and it would have solved things for both sides of the family.
Yeah.
But I think they ended up negotiating on pleasing both sides anyway with an earldom, so the
Yeah.
marriage wasn't really needed.
Hmm. Well, so she comes back to England.
Yep.
She's hanging out at court. She's having a good time, being young,
Yep.
having this European experience under her
Yes.
belt, and she meets Henry Percy.
Yep.
And I feel like everybody looks at the Henry Percy thing as like that would have been her love match, right? I feel like is that the common theme?
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know enough about his story to be able to talk about it too much, but all I know is that it seemed like they wanted to get married and
Yeah.
that Wolsey intervened. And I feel
Yeah.
like What people always say is it was Henry who made Wolsey intervene, but I don't think that was actually the case. I think Wolsey had his own reasoning looking at it saying, whoa, no, 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 we can't do this because this young man has already been promised to somebody else. We can't just
Yeah.
scooch her aside now. It was like being proper at court. You have to go through the proper channels before you can get married to somebody.
And I know it sounds odd considering who she ended up marrying, but you know, Henry Percy is he's like the next level, like on terms of society, you know what I mean? Like they did have to think about those things, and I think Wolsey knew that. And on the flip side, doesn't really affect him personally. But do you really want Henry Percy's dad mad at you? Because I wouldn't. And obviously, the first person that they're going to take it out on if that marriage happened would have been Wolsey. He would have been
Yes.
blamed because he knew about it. He knew like the whispers, and he can't ignore it once he knows, can he? So I think, Wolsey does get a bit of flack for that because
Yeah.
you could say, why not just let it happen? It doesn't directly affect you. But in a way, it does. That's his job. He
Right.
can't just turn a blind eye and hope for the best and feign ignorance to Henry VIII. Like, mm,
Yeah, he would have upset a lot of people if he had let it
oh
go.
yeah,
Yeah, because
definitely.
Percy would have become the Duke of Northumberland, right?
Yeah,
Which is a huge title.
yeah.
It,
She would have been a duchess.
yeah, but her life would have been so different
Hmm.
from what it became when she married Henry, because really it would have given her safety as the
Yes,
Duchess.
absolutely.
But I don't know that she necessarily would have had the proximity to all of the things that she did when she was with Henry. Would she have ended up
Yeah.
staying
I
north?
think it would have ultimately depended on her relationship with Catherine because, ultimately, if somebody else marries your husband, you're not going to like them very much, are you? But if that hadn't have happened, would Catherine have wanted her in her household
Hmm.
as one of her ladies in waiting? Because she could have still done that.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, Percy would have been at court quite a lot, so it wouldn't be unusual for a duchess to be in the Queen's household. But you are right in that she wouldn't have spent all her time there. Like she would have had to be at home at some point. She would have had her own estates to manage and things like that. So, and obviously Northumberland is not close to, well, to anyone that's American, it probably is very close because, you guys have a lot of land, whereas we're
Yeah.
quite small. To us, it's far away from London.
So how far away is it from London, either miles or hours?
Oh, I don't know
I
either,
suppose you
actually.
do
It's
kilometers,
just
huh?
very north. There we go. Very north.
I mean, is it close to Scotland?
Closer to Scotland than London, yes.
Okay, okay, that helps. That gives some
Yeah.
proximity.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about it too, like if she had become a lady for Catherine of Aragon, you can picture, I mean, she was trained for that, really, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. So she'd been in the household of Mary Tudor. She'd had the experience with Claude, Queen of
yeah,
France. So, she had all that experience. It was nothing new to her. So she could have easily carried on in Catherine's household, but it would have just depended if Catherine wanted her there. Like, I mean, long term, by the way. So, and not just somebody that came for entertainments. Like a lot of the duchesses,
yeah,
they wouldn't have stayed at court all the time. They would have just come for entertainment, special events. So it would have ultimately been Catherine's decision of whether she wanted her in her household to be there most of the time or
yeah.
whether she could just be a visiting one. So.
Well, now we know too, because of Sophie's book on Elizabeth Boleyn, that Elizabeth was part of Catherine's household. So it almost seems logical that Anne would too. Like Elizabeth probably would have been like, "Hey, Queen Catherine,
Hmm.
hey, Queenie, Can my
Yeah.
daughter join the
Our daughter
household?
stay, please.
Yeah, so I think that's likely. And then, of course, then you have to kind of look at, well, then Anne would have been at court. She would have been in proximity of Henry VIII. Would it have been inevitable that she would have caught Henry's eye, whether she was married or not?
I think probably, but I would also like to think, and I don't know why I'm giving Henry the benefit of the doubt in this. I really don't, so don't ask why. But I don't think he'd push as far for somebody that was married already. So obviously we know when he had his dalliance with Mary Boleyn, um, she was then got married.
Yeah,
I think if she'd have been married to start with, that probably wouldn't have happened either. I think Henry did respect marriage vows to a point where he wouldn't have done that if they were already married. Now, doing that and then marrying them off is obviously different in Henry's mind. But I don't think he'd have pushed too far. I think she'd have still caught his eye, and I think he'd have still done the whole courtly love, like showering her with affection and presents.
yeah,
But I don't think he'd have gone full scorched earth. Let's, get rid of the Pope and change everything in the country
yeah,
to get her. I don't think he'd have done that. And I could be wrong, but I
yeah.
don't think he
Well,
would.
let's talk about how he behaved with her sister and how he behaved with Bessie Blount. You
Oh,
know, Bessie was, I think she was single when they met,
yes.
and after she got pregnant and had the baby, then he married her
Then,
off to
yep,
somebody.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. But
I
then
do
the,
think that's interesting. And I think it was a good match for her because, you know, back then, like we wouldn't blink an eye now of seeing a child outside of wedlock. We don't care. But then it was frowned upon.
yeah,
But if you're a man given the opportunity to take a wife who is the mother of the king's son,
yeah,
that is a huge deal
it is.
because you know that there's going to be money flowing. You know it.
Right, right, because he's going to be taken care of. And he was so quickly made the Duke of Richmond and Somerset too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
so
I
that
think, I do feel a bit bad for Bessie Blount because I think she was just kind of cast off and
mhm,
but at the same time, I think we need to understand Henry's reasoning behind it that what else can he do?
yeah,
If he doesn't marry her off, it's not good for her because, she doesn't have. Yes, she's got the king's son and there'll be money around, but she doesn't have that protection of having a husband that gave you back then.
yeah,
So I think he had to do that for her. So
yeah. Well,
God,
and
Henry's getting some sympathy today.
I
What's
don't
going on?
don't worry, don't worry. We'll change it, I'm sure, at some point during I just feel like with all of that too, Wolsey was involved. Wolsey was behind there like a master puppeteer making everything happen
Yeah,
that Henry, like he's like, Henry, why did you get her pregnant? Now we got to deal with this. And Henry's like, but he's
yeah,
a boy. She had a son and I don't have any living sons. And so I want to,
yeah. I think Wolsey essentially played the part of Henry's father figure when he was a young king anyway.
let's call from now on, let's call Wolsey the cleaner because that was his job. Wolsey was the cleaner for Henry VIII. I mean, look at Mary Boleyn too. Like Mary Boleyn.
Yeah.
Of course, the question with that one is after she was married, did Henry keep going back? That's the question that we'll never have answered, I don't think, and whether or
No, it
not.
were, and obviously there's the question of her children as well.
Yeah,
Were they Henry's? Were they not? Like, who knows? I think we've got to accept that there's a chance that they were,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Part of me thinks no, because what he did for Fitzroy, he didn't do for them.
Right. Especially the son.
Yeah. And I don't think he'd have let the mother of his children be treated like Mary was by
True.
her family. Like when she remarried, obviously below her rank, they weren't very pleased with her, were they? So
Well, maybe she just wasn't a very good mistress.
maybe. But I just can't see him letting that happen if they
Yeah.
were. I think he'd at least provide financially for them.
Yeah.
Even if he never saw Mary again, I think he'd at least ensure. And obviously they did grow up fine and they were part of Elizabeth's court and stuff like that. So they did fairly well
Yeah.
without Henry.
I
So
mean, they were still half Boleyn no matter what,
yeah,
which was good and bad, depending on what year it was.
yeah, true. Yeah.
At least when Elizabeth came to the throne, it was good for them again.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the other people that I want to talk about too, and while you guys are listening and or watching this, I want you to keep in mind too, like which Anne in these scenarios do you think wins out in the end? Okay, so
Oh
I I
God,
I
is this
really
is this a question and answer?
I just really
Oh,
want like I want people to engage in this. I want to hear what other people think because
I wasn't prepared for this.
oh, you're not being tested. We're the hosts. It's different on this side. I just want you to think about it. As we talk
Okay,
about this, think about which Anne wins, which version of Anne would win. And maybe at the end, we'll talk about what we each think. And then I'd love to
okay.
see what the audience thinks. But I want to talk about one of the scandalous ones that we don't really know if anything ever happened, but that's Thomas Wyatt, the poet. I feel like, and obviously he was married. So that kind of changes a lot because I think he was married in like 1520. So by the time Anne was back at court, he was already married.
Yeah, they were neighbours. So the Boleyns were obviously at Hever Castle. Thomas Wyatt was at um Arlington Castle.
Hmm.
So I think they definitely knew each other. And Anne didn't spend every day of her life at court. We know that she was back at Hever on occasion. So
Yeah.
chances are they did see each other and maybe go for a walk and
Flirt a little.
whatever else. Like I know obviously you can always question Wyatt's poetry of what does that mean.
Yes, that's poetry.
I personally think he was just a master of the courtly love
Yeah.
poetry that was popular
Yeah.
at the time. I think he nailed chivalry.
There you go. I feel
Think
like
he was a little bit of a wind-up merchant, of course, because, we do have, and who knows, it might not even be true, but we do have that story of the jewel that he took off Anne and wore around his neck and then made
I,
sure
d-
Henry saw it.
I don't know that story. How do I not know
Oh,
this
okay.
story?
So there's a story that he well, stolen seems quite harsh. Pinched a jewel off Anne.
Same thing.
Yeah. But I think it was meant to be part of the courtly love games, like, that kind of thing. And he didn't steal a crown or anything. He literally just took
And
a trinket
this
kind
is
of
when
thing.
she was queen.
No, 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 this
Okay.
before.
Okay.
This is when Henry was after her.
Okay.
So he wore it round his neck. And apparently one day they were playing bowls, Henry and Thomas. And Henry had exclaimed that he'd won or something or other. And Thomas took it off and said, let's measure the distance. In other words, look at this. And apparently Henry clocked that that's Anne's and stormed off.
Oh.
So Yeah, and he went to Anne, and Anne apparently just said, look, he took it, that's all it is. It's just nothing's happening. So Henry was appeased, but I think Thomas had a little bit of humour.
He was,
Uh,
yeah, he was trying to
yeah,
get
I think
Henry
he was a
all
bit of a
riled up.
wind-up merchant.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
Either
exactly.
that or stupid. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's not
Well,
the smartest thing to do. But then at the pot that time, Henry wasn't chopping heads off. So,
no, I can't believe I've never heard that story. And I thought I've like, but it's been a long time since I've read all of my Anne Boleyn books, so a lot of that stuff has escaped
I
my.
think it was George Wyatt,
Oh,
maybe,
oh,
that
okay,
wrote the story of it. So 1590s, I think he was writing that, and he'd got the story from a lady who was at court. Can't remember who it was.
right.
Um, but yeah, something like that.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's pretend that Thomas Wyatt wasn't married to, what was her name, Elizabeth Brooks or something
Mm.
like that. Let's pretend like he never married her and Anne came back and they fell in love. Well, what would that look like for Anne to be married to a poet? But I guess he was at court too, right? So,
He was, and he wasn't poor by any means. I think they nowhere near had the wealth of the Butlers or the Percys, but it wouldn't have been a bad match. But I do think that she would have then faced much more of her time back at home
yeah.
because, it's a bit different, a duke bringing his wife to court. You can't just turn up at court. You've got to go through Wolsey to get your rooms. Like even Mary Tudor and Charles Brandon had to arrange rooms at court. You can't just, turn up and think you can stay there.
Yeah.
I think it would be much more difficult for somebody like Wyatt to bring his wife all the time and have her spend a lot of time there. But again, it also would have depended on if Catherine still wanted her in her household
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So could she have stayed at court that way? I do think her life would have been different, very
Way.
different.
Well, and I just had to look up quick, and I don't know, I just Googled it real quick because in the early 1520s, Thomas Wyatt wasn't yet knighted.
No,
He didn't become a knight, I think it said until 1537. So she would have basically been without a title
yeah,
until 1537, and then she would have gone by what, dame,
lady.
lady.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So very different outcome. And his diplomatic career was kind of all over the place too. Like,
it was, and let's face it, if you read the records, like the poor ambassadors, they're not. It's not like us where if you are salaried anyway, your salary goes in on whatever day, or there's no. You can't rely on that. Like,
yeah.
especially back then, we see so many letters from that time where the ambassadors, diplomats are writing to Wolsey saying, I've got no money. Like, you've sent me here.
Yeah.
I have no money. And like they can't eat. Like, what are they meant to do? So I don't think it would have been a secure lifestyle. But obviously, she wouldn't have done it. Well, she might have chosen to go abroad with him. I doubt it. But I think it would have been very different. I think on the plus side, there is the fact that she could have probably stayed at court either through Catherine's household or at least going to see her mum there.
Yeah.
So, her mum and dad were still very involved with the court. So there's always that opportunity, but I think a large portion of her life would have been spent back in Kent. So
I don't know why, but I picture like of all the ones that we've talked about so far, I picture Anne's life with Thomas Wyatt as her like pregnant all the time with a brood of children.
yeah. But
Like,
then you've got to wonder, do we think she'd be happy? And I can't say no to that question.
right. But, at such a young age, she got to experience so many amazing things that to me,
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me that she would want to travel with Thomas to
Yeah.
experience more of the world because once you get at that taste, human nature doesn't change. Once I went
No.
to England, I wanted to travel more. I wanted to go see more things. I was like, get me out in the world. Let me see what other cultures I can experience. I don't think it was any different for Anne.
No.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Enjoy complimentary access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection and a welcome offer of 200,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
I think she does seem to have been quite a free spirit.
Yeah.
So you're probably right that she probably would have gone with him. I wouldn't say all the time, but an adventure's an adventure, isn't it? So maybe she would have. But I think you're right. I can imagine her spending a lot of time pregnant. Um, but yes, I think it would have been a very different lifestyle.
Yeah, very different. Okay, so Percy was safety but obscurity.
Hmm.
Wyatt to me is proximity without protection.
Yes.
Okay, so now I want to bring up another idea. Okay, and this is one that I feel like nobody ever talks about. Like, what if Anne Boleyn had agreed to being Henry's mistress?
Oof.
Right? Well, let's just, I mean, a lot of things would have had to change for her to be okay with it. But let's just say she was okay with it and she was like, yeah, I could be your mistress. This is like, I want to, I'm going to bring up something because I want to look at this comparison because I think this will help us move forward on this topic is let's look at Henry II of France and
Mhm.
Diane de Poitiers, if that's how you say her
Yeah.
name. And she was his primary mistress.
Mhm. Yeah.
The same thing Henry VIII had promised Anne,
Yeah.
right? So what would that have looked like if Anne was Henry VIII's
I think
primary?
we need to accept that she would be treated very differently from how Mary Boleyn and Bessie Blount were treated. Because, yes, they were mistresses, but they weren't formal mistresses that were put into that position. They were basically Henry's conquests.
Yeah, and hidden.
Yeah. I think she basically would have been treated like an extra queen. Not to the extent that Catherine would have been present at things like state banquets and, things like that. She would have obviously been there, but not in the position of the queen. But I think in terms of her accommodation and things like that, she would have essentially been treated like a queen. She would have had her own apartment. Essentially, what she was treated like when they decided that Catherine was going
Yeah.
and he set her up in her own apartments, things like that. I think that would have been it, but Catherine still would have been in the picture.
Yeah. She
But
never would
then
have. Yeah.
I don't know what's worse for Catherine in that situation. Obviously, nobody wants to be shipped off, separated from your husband and your daughter,
Right.
your
Yeah.
household stripped, and basically told that you're not the queen. Nobody wants that. But at the
No.
same time, do you really want to live in the same palace as your husband flaunting
Yeah.
another woman at every opportunity other than where he specifically needs the queen there?
Right.
Because that's the only time that Catherine's gonna be his primary choice, and that's not even a
Yeah.
choice. She had to be there.
Well, then also the question is, if Anne held this position with Henry, what would have happened to her had she gotten pregnant? Would Henry have been like, okay, well, sorry, honey, you served your purpose. See you later. I'm shipping you
I
off.
think if it had have probably been a girl, yes. I think that's likely what he would have done. I think he probably would have said, "Look, it's done now." Possibly, he probably would have married her off and, found her a good match. But I think that probably would have been it.
Yeah.
But you do have to then think if she'd have took that role, what would have happened when Catherine died?
Right.
Because regardless of where she lived at the time, even if she'd have still been with Henry, she probably would have still died around that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would he then have married Anne?
I think maybe the bigger question is, would the English nobility and the English subjects have accepted Anne in that position? Because it wasn't really socially, I mean, I feel like it was more acceptable in France
Oh, absolutely.
than it
Yeah.
was in England.
Yeah.
So would people have still talked poorly about Anne? Would the Reformation have still happened?
I think they'd have still talked poorly of her, but not to the extent that they did, because Catherine still would have been queen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what upset a lot of people that, Catherine had been there from such a young age. She was loved by the population, and then she's thrown away like she's nothing for this woman that, has seemingly come out of nowhere. There's no royal title there, there's no royal family to her back. It's just Anne Boleyn. And
Yeah.
I don't say that demeaning Anne in any way. It's just the reality of it. Catherine was royalty. Anne wasn't. So I don't
Hmm.
think they would have spoken as badly because Catherine still would have been the queen. I still think they would have been not very nice towards Anne if she was out in public, but she wouldn't have had a coronation, all that kind of stuff. So I think they'd have learnt to live with it. But you're right, I think it was more acceptable in France,
Yeah.
definitely, to have an official mistress.
Yeah.
But as for the Reformation, I think yes, it still would have happened, just a lot slower. Would it have happened during the Tudor period? Probably, because you did have, I'm going to go off about tutors again now, the humanists, the ones
Yeah.
that did want change. Like even Erasmus, he was Catholic till he died, but he wanted reform.
So
He
changes.
didn't want to change to Protestantism by any means, but he wanted the church to improve. He wanted to get rid of selling indulgences and things like that. And that's what sparked it all off in reality. So I think that was already happening. So even without Henry and Anne, yes, it still would have happened, just I think a lot slower
Right. The
and
ball was
less
already in,
chaotic.
yeah, the ball was already in motion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I think too about Diane de Poitiers, if you set her and Anne side by side, they were such different women too. I feel like Diane knew her place.
Hmm.
She was confident in her place. She knew like there's nothing that she could do for Henry II, like to
Yeah.
not love her or not listen to her.
Hmm.
Whereas Anne, I don't know that Anne knew her place. I always feel like Anne, she was so smart. And I
Yeah.
think she had a way sometimes of letting her mouth get away from her. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest difference between the two is that maybe Anne still would have gotten herself into some trouble with Henry, even as his mistress.
Yeah. And I think, what would you can offer somebody to the position of an official mistress? Is Henry never likely to sleep with another woman just because he's got an official mistress? Of course he will.
Yeah. You
He's the
can.
king. Like, and he had Catherine, he had Anne. What if both were pregnant? What's he meant to do?
Right. He needs to have a release.
There we go. So there comes another mistress.
Yeah.
Anne's not going to like that. And to be
Hmm.
fair, we can't judge her for that because nobody wants their partner, their husband, whoever it is. No one wants that. So you can't blame her for reacting.
Yeah.
But you're right in that Catherine knew to turn a blind eye.
Right.
I don't think Anne had the restraint to be able to do it, especially if she saw it with her own eyes. I don't mean seeing the physical act, by the way. I mean the, affection,
Yeah.
should we say. So I think even if she got a hint of it, I don't think she hadn't been brought up the same way as Catherine. Like, Catherine was born to be a queen. I think
Yeah.
Anne reacted like any woman would.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, that she wasn't raised to be a queen, no, to turn a blind eye to certain things. But at the same time, even if she'd have married Percy, he could have done the same thing. And
Yeah.
she would have been expected to turn a blind eye. But, it takes a lot of restraint to do that, doesn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, I feel like the difference between Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn was Catherine of Aragon was very stoic, and that was because of her upbringing. I don't put stoic and Anne Boleyn together in a sentence because I just don't see it.
No. I think they've had very, very different personalities,
Yeah,
very different upbringings,
for
very
sure.
different life experiences. Like, look what Catherine went through when Arthur died. Do you know what I mean? Like, she went through a lot, and you got to give it to her. She put up with Henry.
Yeah, she did. Okay, so Anne as a mistress, here's so we had Percy with safety and obscurity. Wyatt was proximity without protection.
Yep.
As a mistress, it's likely survival, but silence,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And instead, she became queen. And as queen, she had power. She
Yep.
could work on reform,
Hmm.
and she had the scaffold. What a
Yeah.
different ending, like if
Yeah.
if she were to step back before she made the decision to marry Henry VIII and looked at choices like this. If she were able to have these choices laid out before her, I wonder which one she would have chosen. If she had known she was going to die.
Especially if you haven't got, sorry, if you haven't got Uncle Norfolk at your ear as well.
Yeah, there's so many variables that go into this, isn't there?
Because, like, I'm not calling them pimps in any way. I don't agree with that opinion that they pimped the women out of their family. But, you know, it's a normal reaction that if somebody says, "Can I marry your daughter or your niece?" and that person happens to be a very rich king, you're gonna be a bit excited, aren't you?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you can kind of see why they probably would have been like, do it, do it. But
yeah.
I think if she didn't have any influence from anyone, whether they're pushing her towards Thomas Wyatt or Henry, whichever, just her on her own, I think she probably would have married Percy.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the Anne that you think wins
Yeah,
is the Duchess of Northumberland.
yeah. I don't know if she'd have been, as happy as she was when she first became queen,
Right, right.
but long term, I think that's a happier life.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just going to throw this out there because we've talked about all of these. I think that Anne as queen still wins. In so many, like, I love the idea of her marrying Percy and it's a love match and they, live happily ever after and she's still involved at court. But as queen, we all we have to do is look at all the books about her today. You
That
know,
is true. And she
in the
did do good. She
yeah,
did. She did a lot for, obviously, by area, education. She did a lot.
Yeah.
You've got to give her a due in that. And, but yeah,
She had to die in order for all of these positive things to happen about her. I mean, and her daughter became queen, you
that is very
know,
true.
like that is her
The best
legacy.
queen.
When we think of like the film Anne of a Thousand Days, her big speech in the tower
Hmm.
where,
Yeah.
she's like, my daughter will be queen and she'll be the best there was,
Yeah.
or whatever the quote is, somebody's going to tell me. It's true.
It is true. Yeah.
I'm sure Anne never said that to Henry, but if you sit back and look at it, you go, what a true statement. He did
Yeah.
not have the foresight to see that it was inevitable that Anne Boleyn's daughter would one day become queen, because in his head, he still thought he was going to find another bride to give him a bunch of sons.
Yeah.
And little did he know that
Absolutely.
didn't quite play out the way that he had hoped.
Yeah.
I mean, his only son didn't live very long before he died, and then it went right back to his
But then I
illegitimate
suppose if
daughters.
you flip it, even if Edward had lived just another couple of years, he probably would have been married.
Maybe to Jane Grey, like Thomas Seymour wanted.
So there's a possibility that Edward would have had a child in that short time.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth may not have ended up on the throne, but then we're back on what ifs, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. This is
I will
like
save them for another day.
there's so many. I love the idea now of doing these what ifs with you. And if you're listening right now and you have like what ifs in your head that you want us to talk about, please reach out to us and give us your suggestions. I know you guys are always good at giving suggestions for like our parallel lives and historical Tinder stuff on Dr. Emma and me. Off the record, I really want you guys to reach out, connect with us,
Yes.
and tell us what you want. I mean, this I feel like this episode is more about the listeners and more
Yeah.
about interacting and looking at things from a different perspective. And I kind of think like that's why I wanted to call it off the record, because it's different. It's different from what I normally do or what we normally see, but I think people are interested in topics like this too.
Yeah, definitely. It's something a bit different, isn't it? We're not
Yeah.
just sticking to one solid subject and we're just going off on tangents and anything else that comes our way. So, yes, please make suggestions and we'll talk about
Yes,
them.
please. And
Especially what ifs. I do like what ifs.
yeah, we are having fun with them, even if it causes you to lose sleep thinking about them.
Yeah, it hurts my brain for at least 3 days afterwards.
After the last time we did all those what ifs, Amy was like, my brain still hurts. I feel like I've done so many
I
episodes in my
don't think I slept that night. I think I just had, what if this, what if that, going through my head all night. And then Mary Tudor was an empress, and that was
yes.
awesome. So
Yeah.
that is really what should have happened.
Yeah,
But somehow with Henry Cavill at our
oh,
side.
yeah, Henry
Maybe
Cavill.
he could have been her male mistress.
Ooh,
Win-win all round there.
all around. I love how you brought up Henry Cavill again. I love it. It was that episode that really pushed me toward doing this series with you, because I think like it helped me realize that I'm not the only one who thinks about these things. I'm not the only one who has opinions on these things. And what better than to be able to talk about something like this with a friend of yours?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it's
And we always have fun. So.
we do. So you guys make sure you tune back every Sunday. We'll have new episodes coming out. And once again, I want to hear which Anne wins from you.
Yes.
And I also want to know what suggestions you have. What do you want to hear us talk about? Because we are ready and we're open for suggestions.
Can we talk about the results of which Anne wins at the start of the next one?
Yes, we sure can. I would love that. So please interact, people. If nobody interacts, so then we'll just make it up. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining me on this first episode of Off the Record. I can't wait till next week.
My pleasure. I will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Tudors, Dynasty, and Beyond. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you never miss a new release. And if you loved it, leave a quick review. It helps more history lovers find the show. Want to support the podcast and get bonus content? Head to patreon.com/tudorsdynasty. You can also find the link in the show notes of this episode. Join the conversation with Rebecca on social media at Tudors Dynasty.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 month, $90 for 6 month, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Until next time.